We're returning to our top story tonight in the Middle East, where the conflict between Israel and Iran continues to escalate. You're looking at a live shot right now of Tel Aviv, where hours ago, air raid sirens and explosions rang through the sky as Israel shot down Iranian missiles. Iran says that Israel had started a war and will pay a high price. That after Israel hit high-level military and other targets in Iran overnight, most of them nuclear as well. Now, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita Anand, today was joining other world leaders in urging de-escalation. So what does this military escalation right now in the region mean for that area? Joining me now is former commander of the Royal Canadian Navy and former Vice Chief of the Defence Staff, retired Vice-Admiral Mark Norman. Also, retired Major General Scott Clancy. He is the former Director of Operations for NORAD. Thank you, gentlemen, both for joining me right now. Vice-Admiral Norman, I wanted to start with you. There's been concern for months in this region that we could be on the edge of a full-scale war. How worried are you that we're at that tipping point right now?
Well, I mean, I've been worried for a long time. Every one of these events, just unfortunately pushes us farther towards whatever that tipping point may or may not be. And the challenge we all have, and I'm sure General Clancy would agree, is we don't really know what the tipping point is, because at the end of the day, these are human decisions being made in the respective capitals of the different belligerents in this conflict, and they're doing it in a broader context. And so what we're seeing right now, if it were in the strict isolation of the events of the last 24 to 36 hours, it would be disturbing enough. The problem is we're seeing it play out in a much broader context that is, decades, if not centuries in the making. We're seeing it play out in the context of the issues that Israel is trying to manage on the ground in Gaza and elsewhere. And we know that there's a long-standing tension and arguably a potential conflict in the making between Iran and Israel. And, the last thing I would say in this specific context is that notwithstanding how troubling this is, and I can understand your viewers being concerned, Israel was well within their right to do what they did. And to be quite blunt, I think there's many capitals around the world who are privately grateful for the fact that Israel took the action it did to once again prevent Iran from having a nuclear capability. So that's a long initial answer to your first question, Mike.
No, and I appreciate it. General Clancy, I mean, with that sort of backdrop of the nuclear armament and what Iran has, how worried are you about the escalation from both sides?
I think Admiral Norman is right on the mark here. We have to be concerned. And a few things. If you take a look at the target sets that were struck over the course of the last 24 hours by Israel, we're talking about command and control. We're talking about decapitation of the Republican Guard Corps, as well as the senior elements of their military, as well as their nuclear program. Then it's their air defense assets. This could look exactly like what a strike would look like if you were starting to try to topple the regime. The next 48 to 72 hours, or the next set or series of targets that they strike, are going to be very telling. If you go after their police and their ability to maintain domestic control versus the continuing of a strategic neutralization of the nuclear capability, those are two different end states that we're trying to guess at what Netanyahu and Israel is clearly after here. And this is why we have to be concerned. I would watch very significantly the reactions of the Muslim world, especially the Sunni Muslim world, as they see Iran having a nuclear weapon as much of an existential threat to them, perhaps, well, not quite as much, but very close to what Israel sees.
And Mike, if I can add,
yeah, go ahead, please.
No. What I was going to add to what General Clancy just said is that, when we watch this unfold, and with concern and understandable and legitimate concern, Israel would have known that Iran would retaliate. And so the question now, as General Clancy has indicated, is how much of the retaliation are they prepared to absorb? Are they prepared to kind of pause and take a breath, or are they going to escalate in response to this? So that's really what we have to watch, as he said.
Yeah, and I wanted to also pick up on what General Clancy had said, Vice Admiral Norman, in terms of the specific targets and making sure that they're going after leaders of the military, that they're going after people who are running the nuclear facilities there as well. What does that tell you about where they want this to go?
Well, we shouldn't be surprised by any of this. I mean, being concerned and being surprised are two fundamentally different things. I mean, those of us who've been watching these things for a while, and regrettably, Iran has continued to provoke not just Israel, but they're a belligerent in the region, and they are a threat to both regional and global security. So, this is. I know it's hard for people to accept perhaps the language that General Clancy and I are using because of the utter violence and destruction that's involved here, but this is entirely appropriate. And part of the challenge Israel is managing is the fact that because of everything else that's going on, and because of the concerns around public opinion in many of the Western nations, including Canada, they don't have a lot of credit left in the goodwill bank, and so we need to be very careful that, as General Clancy said, we need to watch this very carefully. Israel has to behave responsibly, as does Iran. This was in the best interests of global security, and now we have to see how the two sides are going to respond. There's been a lot of saber rattling for decades over these issues, and I'm not convinced that June 13th of 2025 is going to be the moment at which this all goes catastrophically wrong. But that doesn't mean that it's not a bad day. And it's a much worse day if you're in Tel Aviv or elsewhere in the Middle East right now.
General Clancy, I've only got about 20 to 30 seconds left, and I know this is a difficult thing to try and sum up in that amount of time, but how concerned are you about tomorrow and the day after? I mean, considering what Vice Admiral Norman just said, but the end game here and what that could look like.
Yeah, so I think that I'm balanced and exactly along what Admiral Norman said. We have to be concerned. I'm not very surprised. Those of us who watch the conflict and regional stability and how it spills over into global stability have been watching the evolution of Iran and its nuclear program and its sloughing off of the entire international community as it pertains to the enrichment program and their missile development programs. So I am concerned. However, the reaction from the rest of the Muslim world and the reaction from the Western world on both sides and the global South for calm and de-escalation are very telling as to where I think Iran is going to be looking. I am concerned with Russia and China's involvement, and that could change dramatically how this conflict evolves.
Okay, gentlemen, unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave it there, but I really appreciate you spending the time with us. Former Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy and former Vice Chief of the Defense Staff, retired Vice Admiral Mark Norman, and retired Major General Scott Clancy, former Director of Operations for NORAD. Thank you so much for being with us, gentlemen.